And our first speaker, she is currently setting up an energy transition center with the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, where she is professor and deputy director of COPPE, which is Latin America's largest center for research and education in engineering. She is also lead coordinating author of the IPCC and has just finalized a report on transport, which will be published next week. Suzana Kahn Ribeiro undoubtedly has a lot on her plate at the moment, yet she has taken the time to join us here in Trondheim today, luckily for us. And I know that she sees a lot of potential in renewable energy in her own country and region. But there is one important barrier to unlocking this potential. A barrier that I know that we're going to be discussing during this session, which reminds me, if you want to participate, once again, don't hesitate to use Slido. You're doing a great job so far, so please continue to do that. And of course, our experts on the front row will be part of the discussion too. But now it is time to leave the floor to Suzana Kahn Ribeiro. Please take it away, Suzana, and give her a warm applause.
Well, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to invite me to be here. It's a pleasure being here. Well, my goal here in my talk is to address Latin America perspective. But first I'd like to say that although the reality today shows us that what we really need from any perspective is to be independent from abroad. We've seen with this Russian crisis, Ukraine, during the pandemic, China and things like that, all the world needs to be more independent. And this is interesting because it's exactly what renewables is about. It's completely decentralized. So I think that this crisis that we are facing now give us a kind of a stimulus to pursue a higher share of renewable in our energy matrix. So let's move to the next. Yeah, that's it. Well, but we have to follow not only the transition to a low-carbon future, but a just transition. And this is a sort of definition of just transition, that we must be aware of the danger of not promoting a just transition and widening the gap between developed and developing countries. For the sake of the global community, no one should be left behind. And this is important for every country. I mean, stress between countries is not good for anyone. This creates tension. So it's very important, the just transition, not only for the poorer countries or developing countries. Well, for developed world, what we see as the importance for the transition, of course, is setting a phasing out of fossil fuel and reshape the economy. For South countries, the main issues are the increase of energy, because we are still increasing our energy consumption, and we have to. But on the other hand, we have a lot of renewable resources, especially in Brazil. We have wind, solar, biomass, sustainable biomass, I should say. Possibility of green hydrogen, because we have sources to produce hydrogen, renewable sources. So most of those countries have tropical countries have enough resources. We also have a high rate of urbanization, and this means growing demand for building stock. And GHG emissions of building sector are increasing. But again, on the other hand, we also have a lot of possibilities in raw materials to produce bio-based material for the construction sector, such as residues, bamboo, rice, bioconcrete. So there are several opportunities regarding construction. So not only opportunity to have other kinds of materials for building, but also its opportunity to restoration, reforestation, and a lot of things that we have to do due to land use and land use change. And Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America had the largest CO2 emissions from land use change. And therefore, another opportunity very important for us is to establish what we call the bioeconomy, with not only biofuels, biomaterials, biotechnology, using the diversity, the biodiversity that we have. So those are, I should say, the main opportunities. But to seize these opportunities, we must be able to have finance flow. And this was already mentioned before. This morning we have a lot of discussion about financing and financing flows. I showed this slide here just to illustrate how lively finance schemes are now. Green bonds and lots of different finance instruments, new financial instruments. But what are the needs to match the scale of the challenges and the opportunities in those countries, in southern countries? Well, first of all, we need finance, not only additional finance, but use the existing funds in a smarter way. We need policy and regulation. Policy must be effective to promote green investments by aligning laws and regulation to increase public and private finance. Regulatory mechanism to promote reporting of the results of climate actions by business as a demonstration effect. Those things that I mentioned to you, innovative finance and things like that, will give us more confidence, will give the investors more confidence to change their patterns, their investment patterns. We need to build trust, we need to build confidence, and if we focus more in transparency, in clear rules, this might be doable. Summarizing this slide here, I would say that governance, strong governance, is what we need to overcome the barriers that we have to having investments in our countries. Well, change of investments is already happening, but we need to accelerate. You can see that we have a global growth in investments in renewables, but it's not enough. It's estimated 2.1 trillion in the next coming years, but one important issue that I'd like to highlight here, because these slides could lead to a kind of misunderstanding that we have a lot of investments in renewables. Some countries, as Brazil, has a lot of available resource, renewable resource, but what is needed to have a real renewable shift is not only the resources on renewable, solar, wind, whatever, but the integration of them. So flexibility in power system is key for this integration because we have different shares and different times to enter into the grid. And integration is the backbone, I would say, of a renewable system in the future. And why I'm saying that? Because this implies in investments in other areas of knowledge, such as digital transformation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So there are a lot of other skills that are needed for us to really achieve this future, including more renewables. And this slide here is just to illustrate that it's not only investment patterns that are changing, oil companies are changing as well, and we have discussed this this morning with Equinor, that two ladies from Equinor were here, and we saw that the changes that are now in place, even their names. Total become Total Energy, Shell Energy, even Equinor was State Oil and changed for Equinor. So there is a consensus that we need to change. So this is a new mindset. All companies, all big companies, here is the Brazilian one, Petrobras, all big companies are together in an organization trying to see how they can reduce their carbon content in each barrel produced. So this is something that is already happening. So this slide is to show you that we have reached a kind of a consensus that what is the direction that the world is going. But there are some bottlenecks to overcome. We have some barriers. And I listed here some of these barriers. One, of course, is the financial instrument that I mentioned already to you, new agency or institutions with specific role and responsibilities in order to give confidence to investors and public infrastructure investment, stimulating demand, stimulating firm investments, with specific performance standards or generic performance standards. And this I would like to mention. The ESG that was tackled this morning as well. ESG became a mainstream in companies. So all companies consider environmental, social, and governance. So as ESG, when it comes to carbon, something like that might now happen as well. Another issue that I think is very important is enhancing social acceptance through public relation campaigns and positive visions, because no one wants to pay more because of the carbon. I could be one or the other, but usually consumers are not willing to pay for the carbon. If you remember President Macron, when he taxed the oil, the diesel, it was a mess in France. I think in Belgium something like that happened as well. So it's very important to enhance social acceptance. And to end, I'm not sure because my time is 0 all the time, so I'm not, I continue. Well, okay, but because it's 0, I'm looking at it, but, well, go on. Let's move. This is just to show you, this is my institution. COPPE is the postgraduate engineering at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And what I want just, I probably are not understanding what is there. It's too light, but we are reshaping. Even academia is changing because we need to have other kind of courses, more integrated, more horizontal. So we are trying to make a transition from that old department, very defined, mechanical, civil, chemical, to be more integrated among themselves. So we are now moving to horizontal structure, and sometimes like a matrix structure involving several labs, different departments, and even social science together with engineering, because we need also ethics, consumer behavior, so lots of different things, even philosophy, together. But because the world is in a transition, it's not only the energy sector. So now it's to sum up, the main factors for regions to benefit from energy transition trend, I can list some of them. First, availability of renewable resources, but also with that, the ability to develop, implement, and operate those resources efficiently. Market structure and legal and regulatory framework capable of ensuring efficient outcome for all society entities involved, and ability to attract large volumes of capital at low cost to assure investments financing. So it's not that we are complaining about we don't have investment and so on, but you need to have an environment that gives confidence to the investor. And the very last one, my final remarks. Lower new technology costs to have a just transition to a low carbon mode. This is very important because, as I mentioned before, no one will pay more because of the carbon. Any consumer, not individual, not firms in the industry, they don't want to pay more. So we need to lower the cost. Capacity building to prepare next generation to deal with new technologies so that will be not increase the gap among countries. All this capacity building is needed. The best strategy to ensure a sustainable, relevant place on the path toward transition is have large investments in science, technology, and innovation. And here I show you a figure just to see, in yellow is Brazil, how far we are from the countries that are very innovative. And this is a percentage, it's not an absolute amount of money. The percentage that we invest in R&D is very low, and and for me, this is the main constraint for Latin America perspective. We neglect the enormous importance of R&D for our development, and I think this shows us why there are so many countries behind without leading the transition. We invest very little in R&D, and this, I think, is a huge constraint. Thank you so much.